Savage Garden was an Australian pop duo consisting of Darren Hayes on vocals and Daniel Jones on guitar, keyboards, and background vocals. Formed in Brisbane, Queensland in 1993, they were signed to John Woodruff's talent agency and achieved international success with their number one hit singles I Want You, To the Moon and Back, both 1996, Truly Madly Deeply, 1997, and I Knew I Loved You in 1999. The band's two studio albums, Savage Garden on March 24th of 1997, and Affirmation, November 1st, 1999, reached number one in Australia and Sweden, and the top 10 in the United Kingdom and United States. These albums sold a total of 23 million copies worldwide. The group won a record 10 ARIA Music Awards in 1997 for their debut album and its related singles. They disbanded at the end of 2001, with Hayes continuing as a solo artist and Jones moving into record production before becoming a real estate agent. So let's talk about this duo. For the first song in their self-titled debut album, To the Moon and Back, is one of the band's strongest, with the right amount of lyricism, pace, instrumentation, and vocals to confirm that. Carry On Dancing is one of the songs that showcases the duo's ability to experiment with their sound and to always be refreshing. But this song, like many of their other songs in their discography, I never gravitate to. It may be stronger in comparison to the weaker duds, but it's not a song I would actively seek out. Tears of Pearls is a fine song, but not something I'm attached to. I Want You is one of their hits that sticks, where its metaphorical lyricism and instrumentation is to the song's benefit and is enjoyable on its own standards, even if I prefer something like To the Moon and Back. Truly, Madly, Deeply is another hit that is one of the duo's best, that just like the first single, has the right amount of lyricism, pace, instrumentation, and vocals that is never too lacking or alienating. Violet is one of the album's singles that I think has its own amusing vibe that allows it to not feel like a filler track. All Around Me has this really zany synth sound and solid admiration themes in its style, but then you get to the posh rapping, which just brings the song down. Darren Hayes' vocals and Daniel Jones' instrumentation are already good. They don't need gimmicks in their own songs, especially when they feel out of place for the song. Universe is one of their best album singles because this one sounds like it can be one of their popular hits that doesn't sound like one of their fun songs. A Thousand Words is a song that feels very middleman in its tone. It's too energetic to be a softer song and too standard to not take itself seriously. Break Me, Shake Me has this soft, bassy, slightly mysterious vibe that I dig. The rock-like chorus, in spite of taking away the vibe, adds to the energy of the story being told with this song. So it gets to experiment effectively without being totally inconsistent. Mine doesn't really stick out among the other songs on the album and just feels too casual to be thematically rich, nor enjoyably experimental to have a novelty. Funny how the song got replaced in the international release of the album with Promises, that is much more fun in its instrumentation and lyrics that doesn't rely on being emotional. To promise that we will have more consistent songs like this, I can't guarantee. Santa Monica is a soft, sweet song that doesn't try to be or sound like a romantic ballad. Just a simple love song with no extra stuff. A perfect end to the album. To summarize my thoughts on the first album, it's quite good. Despite being a pop duo, Savage Garden knows how to get the most out of their sound by experimenting with it. It keeps things refreshing, but it is kind of a detriment given the fact that without the right balance of things, it makes some of their songs come out underbaked or alienating that aren't fun to listen to. Now on to the second album, Affirmation, with the first song on the track list, the titular album song, which may lack lyrical prowess since this song is their most blunt in what they are talking about, but the instrumentation is enough to keep the song afloat from just being a song they didn't try that hard on in comparison to their other work. Hold On is an okay track that, while has a certain appeal, it's not one I find myself attached to. I Knew I Loved You is just one of those songs you can't deny the greatness of. It's the song most people know when you think of Savage Garden because it has a level of appeal that can't be found in the other songs. There really isn't anything that can top it. The best thing is just a filler song. Not to say it's bad. In fact, it is on par with the other filler songs of the first album, but it is better than the future songs on this album. Crash and Burn is one of those songs that manages to hold out due to its themes, otherwise it is kind of forgettable musically. Chained to You is the return of the duo experimenting with their sound. This one reminds me a lot of the kind of pop songs you would find on Disney Channel and Nickelodeon. I know a lot of these kinds of songs are because of the 90s and 2000s, but you get what I mean. It's one of those songs that is more iconic and memorable in the group's discography. The Animal song is just not anything of note. It's basically a filler song. I know what the song is about, but I feel that the group has done better songs about being free and one's own self in comparison to this. The Lover After Me is just an okay song. Not really much to say here. Two Beds and a Coffee Machine has good lyrics, but doesn't have the it factor for repeat listens. You Can Still Be Free is not really that memorable to me. It doesn't even have the pull to be appreciated. Gunning Down Romance just guns down anything romantic about the song. It is the equivalent of being an ending credits soundtrack song in a movie, not a song worth listening to on my own terms. I Don't Know You Anymore somehow manages to make me recognize its worth in comparison to the previous songs on this album, so credit where credit is due. To surmise my thoughts here, this is definitely an inferior album where I end up liking like half of the selections that I like on this album in comparison to the first. And it kind of has that specific like 90s sound. Like I feel this one is tries to be more consistent in their sound in comparison to the first, which I feel the first did more in, experimenting in their sound in comparison to the second album that while tries to be more consistent just ends up kind of sounding the same. You know what I mean? To talk about the singles tracks from the two respective compilation albums, Truly Madly Deeply Ultra Rare Tracks and Truly Madly Completely The Best of Savage Garden, there are a total of 8 songs, and I will simply mention the songs I like from here because there isn't much to say on them. Fire Inside the Man has this very theme song kind of vibe, and it doesn't really stick the way it wants to. I'll Bet He Was Cool, among all the singles, has the most orthodox sound to it of all Savage Garden songs. Not to mention this song is where Darren Hayes plays the most with his voice and having that high-pitched falsetto-y backing vocal that makes the song memorable in my opinion. Love Can Move You tries to go for this groovy laid-back vibe, but it just doesn't really do anything for me. This Side of Me has the slow rhythm and tender sound that is just as unique and holds up quite well. Memories Are Designed to Fade isn't anything of note and just sounds nothing worth noting. The 3 songs found in the latter compilation album are just too long and monotonous for the band's potential. It's weird how the first compilation album singles were able to have some pretty good experimental singles that can compete with the other singles on the studio albums. It doesn't help that the second album is a downgrade in consistency in comparison to the first album, where even if the first album had duds, they were well made to not be annoying or derivative. But I don't know what happened. So that's the end of the ranking. What do I think of Savage Garden? Well, they are a pop duo that definitely had their own style, but also knew to experiment to keep things refreshing. They didn't always have quality hits, but the ones that stuck are memorable, and the obscure tracks are just as good, if not better. The first studio album is much more consistent in comparison to the second one, and when Daniel Jones left the group after a tour for Affirmation, Darren Hayes went to have a solo career, but wasn't ever as successful as his time with Jones. All in all, they were an experience when the two were around, but have faded into irrelevance. Sucks, but at least they made a name for themselves. The duo was pretty savage in their experimentation, more so than any other pop artist out there within their boundaries, but they sounded like a garden with their romantic and emotional love songs and ballads. That's all to be said about the duo. Hope you all enjoyed the third discography ranking. Let me know any artists you want me to check out, and I'll be checking out now. Have a good day, evening, night, afternoon, wherever you are from. Have a good one.